Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you are joining us for the first session of the Synergy Speaker Series that spotlights exciting equity initiatives and enduring challenges faced by organizations and the Canadian labor market. The series comes out of YWCA Canada's ongoing work to create inclusion in contemporary work and address the diverse needs and distinct barriers faced by women, two-spirit, and gender-diverse individuals across Canada. One amongst these is Synergy, a national participatory research and knowledge mobilization project funded by the Future Skills Center. If you're here today, it's because you're interested in meaningful action towards a just, inclusive, and equitable future of work. My name is Jolyn Joseph. I'm the Manager of Research, Education, and Knowledge Mobilization at YWCA Canada. I join you today from Treaty 13 territory, Toronto, which is looking rather gray and gloomy from where I sit. Today's panel unpacks the impact of micro-credentials and their potential as barrier-reducing, career-enabling tools for a diverse workforce. We do a land acknowledgement to honor the First People. We're acknowledging the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples in this area for time immemorial. In doing so, we must also recognize the harm that settler colonialism has perpetrated and continues to perpetrate on First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. As we engage online today, let's remember that the digital spaces that we occupy are often used as tools of oppression towards Indigenous women, racialized women, gender and sexual minorities, people with disabilities, and others who experience intersecting forms of marginalization. Today, let's do our best to create a space where we can all safely and meaningfully engage. Now for some housekeeping, some technical and accessibility notes. Closed captions are available in English, and French live interpretation can also be accessed via the interpretation channel at the bottom of your screen. We have a fantastic tech support team on hand today. Should you face any technical issues, feel free to reach out to Kristen or Arissa, tech support in the chat. All participants have automatically their mics and cameras turned off. You will still have the opportunity to engage with panelists. If you have a question for the presenters or a comment, please use the Q&A function. My colleague Jessica Perrin will also be monitoring the chat box in the Q&A. There will also be a feedback link, a form that's launched and opens in your browser right after the session. Please take a moment to reflect and offer this feedback. We will use that for the rest of the series. A certificate of participation will also be generated for all those who complete all 3 sessions. Next slide, please. A little bit about us, YWCA Canada. For over 150 years, YWCA Canada has worked to advance gender equity by responding to urgent needs in communities through national advocacy and grassroots initiatives. Today, we engage diverse communities and corporate partners, young leaders, to collectively achieve a safe and equitable Canada for all. Here's a brief agenda now to orient us to what's coming up. We'll begin with some foundational framing comments by our moderator, followed by a facilitated discussion with our esteemed speakers, after which we'll engage with audience questions and share a few next steps to stay connected and get involved. Over to the moderator, Chloe, to set the stage and introduce our speakers. Take it away. I'm noticing some tech difficulties, I think, for our moderator. Can someone confirm if connectivity for Chloe? Oh, there you go. Let me introduce you. I see you. I am so glad that that has been sorted. So
yes,
let me, give me just a moment as I introduce you properly, Chloe. That is fantastic to see you. A firebrand, a 31-year-old policy analyst, Chloe Marie Brown is employed at Future Skills Center, a research and funding granting agency initiative by Employment Social Development Canada and Toronto Metropolitan University. In her role at FSC, she analyzes how federal transfer payments support provincial training programs across Canada. Her focus is to better understand how different levels of government leverage digital products, business development incentives, and training programs toward reducing nationwide labor shortages. Thank you, Chloe, for your keen insight. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Jolene. Thank you so much, YWCA, for having me today as well. And yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to jump into today's topic, and it's about micro-credentials. It's one of the hot topic issues in education, in my opinion, and there's so much opportunity to explore what this means for lifelong learning. So without further ado, let's get into what a micro-credential is. So in the EU, a micro-credential is defined as proof of learning outcomes that a learner has acquired through a shorter learning experience. They contain the micro-credential within a certified document, and it holds your name, your achieved learning outcomes, the assessment method, the awarding body, and where applicable, the qualifications framework level, and the credits gained. In the EU's definition of a micro-credential, the learning is owned by the learner. This can be shared, it can be taken with them as they gain larger credentials and qualifications, and the quality assurance mechanisms that make a micro-credential portable is guaranteed by the agreed upon standards that exist across the nations. So in contrast, North America is gaining steam on creating micro-credentials. However, the way that we define them changes the way that we access them. So in North America, the general consensus around the definition of a micro-credential is that they are short, career-oriented programs. They are non-degree, independent credits that do not require graduation from a program. So in Canada, we do not have a national qualifications framework like other G7 nations within Europe, Asia, etc. So what this means is that when it comes to the standardization of post-secondary education, each province and territory is responsible for setting the rules and guidelines for how they measure the effectiveness of your learning. So without a federal Ministry of Education, what we rely upon is the Canadian Degree Qualifications Framework, which was adopted in 2007 to assign responsibilities for post-secondary education across Canada. The differences between our network of post-secondary institutions that receive both public and private funding means that the ecosystem for micro-credentials is fragmented. And with limited access to publicly accessible quality controls, this means that professionals have to work with community organizations like YWCA to find avenues for validating their learning if a post-secondary institution does not have one available. So as we're looking in the future of micro-learning, what this means for us as Canadians is that we have an opportunity to work across professional associations, and industry has room to provide knowledge and resources to expand skill validation processes within our local workplaces. So for instance, if you are learning things on the job, your employer does have the power to work with a post-secondary institution to get that formalized and recognized. However, today, what we're going to do is explore what else needs to be done so that micro-credentials deliver on the promise of being accessible to a variety of diverse job seekers with a variety of not only like income needs, but accessibility and accessibility needs, but also getting them ready for industry. So right now we're going to jump into our two panelists for today. We've got Natasha Boskovic. She is the Director of Partnerships and Development and Employment Strategies at YWCA. She has hands-on extensive knowledge of nonprofit managing and executing settlement and employment programs and services while building partnerships across community and corporate partners. Natasha has 15 more than 15 years experience helping immigrants and refugees settle across this great city. Her passion is women's empowerment and the creation of access to opportunities. And next, we have Camille Dundas. Camille is the co-founder of BuyBlacks.com and the principal educator at the Idea Practice, Inc. Camille is a driving force for racial equity educators, as she has worked with the government of Canada, global companies like Google, KPMG, to help them implement anti-racism and allyship education programs. Her latest work with the Idea Practice brings in Dalhousie University, where she's delivering a really great micro-credential program that will help you get a certificate in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. All right, so to jump into today's topic, we're going to start with some questions. And Natasha, Camille, feel free to unmute at this time. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it has been.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you guys for being here. I'm just getting into with all the words that have been said. Our first question is about, and feel free to anyone to take it, but how do you see micro-credentials helping women who have time constraints with their career progression? Camille, I'll get you to start first, and Natasha, I'll get you to take it away later.
Sure. Hey, everyone, and I'm grateful to be here. One of the first things I think about as a mom, as a working person, I think about my time. And I think about, when I think back in my career, how many times I said to myself, oh, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go do this program. I'm going to go get my master's. I'm going to do this. And then I never did. And you know, at that time, I don't know if micro-credentials were around or if I just didn't know about it. But it never occurred to me that there was another option, right? And I think that, you know, the flexibility, the cost effectiveness of micro-credentials really helps women and other equity seeking groups to upskill themselves in a way that's flexible and works for their lifestyle.
So hello, everyone. I would share Camille's important points on even making the decision to pursue micro-credentialing as a career pathway. So accessibility is extremely important. And I can share, for example, what we've made sure that all the program participants in the micro-credentialing program that we provide have access to laptops, for example. That made a huge difference. So all 20 women in each cohort received a laptop, so there would be no interruption with children's learning or, you know, having their own device to work and focus on projects. And that made a huge difference. And as well as wraparound support that we developed around their participation, engagement, and retention in partnership with the University of Ottawa. So it's been an incredible journey. And what we hear as practitioners on employer initiatives that are valued by women, they would like to see employers focusing on retention, especially in male-dominated fields. Women have a higher attrition rate in tech. That's a well-known fact. And they want to see employers that recognize gender-specific obstacles. They want to see flexibility on, especially on remote work, anti-discrimination policies and training, diverse role models in leadership. That is extremely important to see more women in cybersecurity industry acting as a mentor, role model. They want to see parental support and benefits packages that are transparent, open, and they also value peer support and individual career roadmaps. What I would like to encourage, partners in this journey when they're co-creating and co-designing micro-credentialing program, to make sure that accessibility and different learning methods are open to people with different learning abilities and complex needs. That is extremely important.
Thank you for that. That really touches on question 2, because accessibility looks different for everyone, depending on your gender, ability, race, even your immigration status. So question number 2 is, how are institutions working with the private sector to recognize, design, and measure the success of micro-credentials at work? As I think about how much time we're spending at working from home or working in the field, how much of what we learn as we're doing, well, how does that get measured? And one point that you really touched upon that was great, Natasha, is measuring success after the micro-credentials. So if you could dive a little bit more into, like, do you measure salary changes? Do you measure like employment titles? Even like moving laterally or vertically up the career ladder? That would be great for me. So question is, once again, recognizing, designing, and measuring success when micro-credentials are in the workplace. Natasha, you gotta unmute. All right, and then Camille, you'll take it after.
Sorry. So when we talk about partnership endorsed initiatives, so I would say that everything starts with good communication and clear expectations. So in this post-COVID and recovery phase of redesigning successful skills, development models, and best practices, no institution, private or public, can do it on their own. So what I like to say is that we live in a world of forced innovation that can be good or bad. So as a lifelong learning increasingly becomes the norm, we're seeing increased demand for more flexible pathways and micro-credential types of programs and for learners. And we see two-way collaboration initiated by educational institutions reaching out to employers, or employers bring educators to develop their own upskilling and retraining programs. So there's a growth in popularity and trend in employers-driven involvement in designing these programs in the context of addressing their skill shortages. Employers are becoming more involved, more proactive, and more skills development focused to ensure best outcomes. So based on my experience as a practitioner, only employers who see their own responsibility in providing career management and skills development programs succeed in finding the best models and solutions. So they have to conduct their own risk assessments. And what we hear sometimes is that employers are hesitant to invest in upskilling for fear of losing employees shortly after providing the training. But on the other hand, I would say, what is the risk of doing too little? So when employers proactively seeking educators' assistance to create specific skills building programs, I can share some tools to design the most effective program. Educators building the program for employers should start with requirements gathering about employers' job requirements, such as personality type, working conditions, safety, skills needed, on-the-job expectations, roles, and responsibilities. So to develop the most effective content and curriculum that employers are going to use and provide the right support in the right area so that candidates would be ready to deliver and respond to employer-specific needs. So when we talk about measuring success, so first, what success looks like and to whom. So if we talk about different stakeholders, we take a look, on students, from students' perspective, from employers' perspective, from faculty and accreditors as well. They're also stakeholder because we have to talk about quality assurance. So from the student standpoint, so we talk about affordability, upskilling, industry recognition, higher wages, new job or different job, economic self-sufficiency, and how they understand the skill set that they gain and how to apply it in the workplace culture. And different organizations that employers have meeting a specific workplace need and job roles, recruit skilled workforce, diversity, equity, inclusion strategies, retain and reskill and upskill. From the faculty perspective, we can talk about engagement, we can talk about learning, authentic assessment, we can talk about completion, curriculum alignment, and stackable educational and career pathways. So there are different metrics, and from the employer's perspective, what is the combination and the right balance between soft and hard skills? What is it that they're putting emphasis on? So how they're going to create key performance indicators, et cetera, et cetera. So it depends from employer to employer to employer, from industry to industry. But I can say that we're all in this together, so no one can figure it out on their own. We all need each other. And what I can share for the program that we run, how we track success. So first of all, we actively track employment outcomes before and after taking the program. What was the participant employment status, employed, unemployed, or underemployed? Did they start a new job during the program? Have they maintained their current job or have been promoted? And of course, salary changes. So all that is, important to understand learners' experience and the way how employers and educators co-create program. And what we also notice is that for job seekers, for the best employment outcomes for job seekers is when micro-credential complements workers' existing work experience or educational background. So far, although it's like a small sample, least effective is when micro-credential stand alone. But it doesn't apply to all industries and all skills. As I said, it depends whether we're looking into gaining soft or hard skills, technical skills, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you for that, Natasha. This goes into my question for Camille, actually, because as a small business owner and a connection to a university, you're really doing the hands-on work as an employer and institution. So how do you see micro-credentials ensuring a more resilient and inclusive skilled workforce that can create meaningful employment pathways, especially for underrepresented workers in high demand fields? Because the program that you're offering is a part of an MBA that will help people communicate at a professional level. Well, we're always communicating at a professional level, but a different type. So if you can just give us a little bit more information about your program and what it means as a Black entrepreneur to be able to offer this to our traditionally underrepresented worker like myself.
Yeah, and just a correction, the micro-credential is not part of an MBA. It's a standalone micro-credential, and it's stackable with other micro-credentials that Dalhousie is planning to offer.
Thank you.
Just wanted to pick up on a few things Natasha said. Some really important points about employers being hesitant to upskill because of people leaving. Interestingly, most of the clients that I have coming through my course, what they have done is they have, on my advice, have made the course mandatory for new employees. And so the reason that's effective is because when you're trying to change the culture of your organization, you can't, you have to do it, yes, sort of piece by piece, but you can't have like your existing employees and like, okay, great, we did this, everyone has this information, everyone's great, everyone knows about diversity and equity and inclusion. And then you constantly have new people coming in. So unless you bake it into your employee experience, your onboarding experience, it's not going to work. So I encourage them to see it less of as, oh, we have to spend money to upskill these people. I see it, I encourage them to see it as this, we have to look at this as part of our employee onboarding experience. This is the approach that we as an employer want to take, because this specific skill and the skill that I'm offering through my micro-credential is inclusive communications, specifically with diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. If that's important to you, or any other skill that's offered through a micro-credential, right? If that skill is important to you for your workforce to have, then bake it into the experience, right? There's another point you made, Natasha, the fear, and also, I forgot it now. Oh, results, how are we measuring results? And that stayed with me because because it really is true that that looks so different for every workforce. Because for every client that comes to me that wants to do work on DEI, they're similar, but not always the same. And so there are a lot of questions I have to ask, like, okay, well, what have you done before? What have you done so far? What is your vision for the evolution of your brand as an employer? What is it that you are trying to accomplish through this? What difficulties have you had? What are the interpersonal communication problems that you're experiencing right now, so that we can figure out, even though the course is everyone is doing the same course, they're not experiencing it in the same way, which is why I also included a live portion, a live aspect to the course. So it's all online, but there's also 4 live Q&A sessions with me or somebody else on the team. So we get to meet let's say every couple of weeks, based on how long they want to roll out the course for, and they can talk about what they learned in the course and how it impacts them in their real day-to-day work. So and that is at the core of what micro-credentials provide. It's just moving away from a theoretical approach to a more practical approach. And so the employer, think of it as, like a college degree, a university degree, that can show your employer, what you know. Whereas a micro-credential will prove to the employer what you can do. And so at the end of the course, I included an action plan that's a whole module of the course. So they have to fill out that module before they are able to complete the course. And that's something like a tangible document that they then can share with their manager or share with their peers. And in terms of how an employer is looking at success based on what they came in for, they might look at reviews. They might look at changes in their pulse surveys, how people are responding about their sense of belonging, how people are responding about, the questions employers always ask, like, do you feel that management takes XYZ seriously? Do you think that you are supported in your, these questions, right? And they might see a big difference a few months after the course in how people feel in a workplace that is not afraid to take on these issues, to face them kind of head on. Because that is one of the biggest problems we've had in workplaces when it comes to issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Before I started this work, before I launched the course, and I was just coming into organizations and speaking, I could not even get most senior managers to say the word microaggression. I could barely get some managers to say the word Black. It was very, very difficult to get them to a place where there's a comfort level. And that's why I focused the course on communication, because I figured if I can give people the tools to talk about these things, that may be the first step. It's certainly not the only step, but it is the first step to getting people in a room where they feel like, okay, we have a shared reference points, we have shared language that we can use, and I can now talk to you about these things. And I, as the minoritized person, I don't have to be the one to educate you about it. Now we can all take this course together, and then we can just talk about the impact. I don't have to do the additional labor of educating not just my manager, but everyone else around me who hasn't taken the time to learn about these things.
Thank you. That's actually, it's really powerful, because I don't think there's enough emphasis given on adults as learners and how our journeys still have different paces, even though we're finished school. So thank you for touching upon that. And this next question I'm opening up to both of you, but in Canada, we have such a large landscape of small and medium-sized businesses where the capacity to have a human resource or a recruitment team that is mindful of the vast array of differences in workers. So my question is how do you advise employers on the types of tools or community supports that they should be reaching out to if they want to evolve their practice and get to know micro-credentials and the best use for them in their particular situation? Camille, I'm not going to get you to start, and then Natasha, I'm going to get you to take it.
Yeah, you know what? For me, the easy logical answer is talk to your staff. Like, no, I know that sounds simplistic, but when I say talk to your workforce, your employees, understand what they want, understand what challenges they are facing. The only way to remain relevant is to keep talking and making sure that you're keeping on the pulse of what barriers are in place for them, of what could help them to be better employees for you. And you can't just be asking once, and you can't just be asking in one way, because people communicate in different ways, right? You have to now, again, it's about baking this culture like into your workplace. Do we have a culture where, okay, at my one-on-one with my manager isn't just asking me about, my deliverables and whatever. Are they asking me about what my goals are, not just at my annual review, but is that a common conversation? When I was still working in tech, I had one of the best experiences that was so initially difficult for me to even accept as real, because the previous roles that I had, I worked in an environment that was very caustic, that was very like, you don't meet with your manager unless there's a problem. And so coming to working in tech, where you have weekly one-on-ones and you have more of a mentoring or a friendship relationship with your manager, was so different. I remember saying to my husband, is this like, they're asking me how am I feeling? Am I supposed to like actually tell them how am I feeling? Is this some kind of trick? Like, what is this? What is happening? And to have a workplace where you feel like they genuinely actually care about your life. And one of the key things and I had different managers at this workplace, but they all would say the same thing to me in different ways. They would say, it was something to this effect: even if I want to see you succeed, even if it's not here. And that was so telling to me, because what it told me is that the culture of that organization values the person first, as opposed to your simply your role as a worker, as an employee, right? And so they would do whatever they could within the organization, whether it was allowing me to try on a different role, do a stretch program, or pay for me to do a course, to go to a conference, whatever, even if it wasn't necessarily directly connected to my role. Because some organizations, they'd be like, oh, no, that's not within your purview, that's not your role, so you're not doing that. They don't really care about your development as a person. Very many times I hear from people who will put up their hands to do professional development, and they'll be told, no, why? You will never be doing that here. But they're not seeing that the person is looking for growth, right? And so you have to have a culture where that is baked in, where they care about your professional development as a person, and not just the direct output that you can give to the organization.
Thank you. Natasha.
So I do have a couple of ideas. So what I would love to see more, and to encourage employers to include micro-credentialing in education and training sections of their job postings to attract talent. So very often we see a willingness, for example, they outline willingness for continuous learning listed in job posting under skills, competencies, and knowledge. But under education and training, there's no tangible description to acknowledge micro-credentials. And to basically be bold and test different models and strategies and ideas, because like nowadays ad hoc approach or status quo, like that's not the solution. So like I understand that employers have to innovate, but innovate how? And to do it strategically, so employees would actually feel change in the workplace, cultural attitudes, changes in behaviors, even policies, how they include, for example, internationally trained professionals. Are they too rigid in defining the skill set that they require for jobs that they hire for? to test different models, to partner with educational institutions. For example, they all have career centers, to organize job fairs with colleges and universities, to reconsider resume screening criteria that can be exclusionary, to include, identification of potential and upskills during onboarding, and to hire for potential, to reevaluate their hiring practices. So those would be some of the ideas, but overall change, it doesn't come overnight. So there has to be, strategic thinking to invest in retention, upskilling, and reskilling, that can be basically defined as a business growth strategy, because we all know that investing in upskilling is cost effective. It is much cheaper to invest in current workforce than spend time and resources on hiring and onboarding. And at the same time, employees feel valued and feel supported, and that commitment to day-to-day work or tasks or colleagues, team managers, we all benefit from those changes. And when we talk about small and medium-sized employers that we have spoken to, disclose that they have no available resources to invest in upskilling, vast majority, not all. So what we usually share information is, out there, to reach out to community organizations, employment services, and particularly, I would outline an example of amazing program called Canada Ontario Job Grant. That is available to employers as individual employers or consortium of employers to access funding for training. That's available and administered through Employment Ontario. So there are multiple locations, different service providers to tap into that resource, if to utilize and to explore, not to be afraid to explore, to try, and at the same time, thoughtfully think about the process and the future of skills and future of work, like how people are engaging with each other. We nowadays talk about, digital labor relations. That's huge. So I do understand it's a lot to put on HR teams that are already stretched, but we just have to become more pragmatic when we talk about skill set. We all know that skills have shelf life. For example, technical skills last about 2 to 3 years, soft slightly more stable, and we always talk about lots of skills and abilities, and and from employer to employer, but to become more strategic and more bold. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Jolyn, do we have time for one more question?
Unless I don't see a lot of engagement in the chat yet. So yes, while we wait on audience questions, let's pose another question.
All right, so this question is kind of from me personally. I work with mid-career professionals, entry-level professionals, and one of the things that I've been noticing is that there is a fear of educational institutions that runs through generations. Depending on how you interacted with the school system, some people are hesitant to pursue lifelong learning because of the people that gatekeep it. So what advice would you give to a worker that's 40, 30, 20 years old? They have a like their certificate, their degree, whatever it is, and they're realizing that the labor market is not aligned with their current certification. I have a degree in public policy, and I'm starting to notice that I need to learn how to use Adobe and TikTok and a variety of tools that I didn't train for, but this is the reality. So give me advice on how should I approach micro-credentials as a worker, an individual that may not have the insights to do labor market research. I'm going to start with Natasha and then Camille.
So learning becomes most fulfilling when it's tied to a particular goal. So if people want to align their goals with the realities of today's demands and skill set and employers' behavior, and basically not to be afraid of pursuing something new and not to be afraid to ask for help and assistance on that journey, either to register with local employment service provider, get assistance from employment counselor, or to reach out to educational counseling services that are offered in the community. And also my experience is that most colleges and universities are amazing in providing that support through advising services. So they have team members, and their job is basically to sit with a future student on a particular topic or issue to actually present what's going on at the institution, how to access even financing options. And we know that Ontario opened micro-credentials for OSAP applications, which is amazing. So that is huge. So for so many people, they don't have either resources or a lot of time, so it's becoming more accessible, but not to be afraid to talk about those uncertainties, lack of confidence, and seek help. So this can be overwhelming journey, because there are lots of programs out there. So even how to make that decision, that can be quite overwhelming. So and engaging with micro-credentialing or program where people are going to meet peers, speakers, guest speakers, meet professionals from the industry, network. All of that exposure will give them more confidence and more convinced that they're on a right career pathway. And it's not linear, so it can be like, ups and downs, particularly in terms of motivation. That's extremely important, but not to get discouraged. And we all know, for example, when people start looking for a job, there are lots of rejections, and the confidence, it's just dropping, and it's really sad. But motivation, find that one source and support system that will encourage you on that journey. That would be my suggestion.
Awesome. Thank you. Camille?
I would say if you had a negative experience with higher education in college or university, think about the fact that pursuing one micro-credential or a series of micro-credentials is likely to be the exact opposite of that experience that you had in a number of ways. One, the cost. You're not paying for the college experience. The average cost of any degree here in Canada is almost, I think, over 30, probably 35,000 annually. That's probably on the low end. You also, I'm just thinking about the number of electives that I had to drag myself to that I hated during my degree. So you can do the things that you're passionate about. You can do the things that excite you. And that's when you're going to be have the best results from your learning. Also, my advice also is to be prepared with your research before you dive into anything. And if you are already employed and looking for your employer to cover the cost of these things, Natasha just mentioned the Canada Ontario Job Grant. I've had clients that have used that to pay for my services. Again, that's called Canada Ontario Job Grant. Go to your manager and be like, hey, I want to do this course. It costs $10,000. And I know that through Canada Ontario Job Grant, we can put in an application because they will cover up to 50% of the cost. And this is, so you've already done the research, you already found a way to pay for it. And you say, hey, this is why this is going to be good for me. And you give them like the what's in it for them, right? So that's the two things. Be prepared with info if you want your employer to cover it. And realize that you're gonna have a tailored experience because you are gonna be the driver of your educational experience when you do it this way.
Thank you. That was really great. Loved it because very few people realize like you have to step into your life. Like, yes, you're experiencing it, but are you like stepping into it and making the investments in yourself? Because you've only got so much time in this little vessel, you know? So thank you for talking about leading with courage and being bold, because life is a journey. And if you're on it for 60 years, might as well become the master of many things while you got the chance. So I just want to say thank you guys, because this has been a really good, meaningful conversation, not just about like getting a short piece of the pie, but like looking at the career as a whole thing. I'm starting to see the questions coming up in the chat. So Jolyn, take it away.
Sure thing. Again, thank you so much for that thoughtful exchange, and knowing fully well that we're not done, we still have questions popping up in the box as well as on the chat directly to us. So perhaps I can pose two and you can pick what you want to lead with. The first one, and this actually ties in to another question that showed up in the chat as well. What do you think is the future of legitimizing micro-credentials on the Canadian job market? I'll also link that to another question that came up, so perhaps you can streamline your response. Do you think there are issues in some micro-credentials as they're not recognized as real or valuable by potential employers? And if so, what advice would you give to employers who are hesitant to see value in different types of continuous learning, and how they could bring that recognition into it?
Yeah, and then there's a third one. What are your thoughts about micro-credentialing courses like edX and Coursera? That's also related.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's interesting, and I'll answer that from two perspectives. One, as someone who was trying to figure out how to launch their micro-credential, right? And I said, okay, I have all I've written out the whole course. I spent 2 years working on it. Why don't I just throw it up on Coursera or Kajabi or whatever, right? And that's fine. However, when Dalhousie approached me, really, and it was out of the blue, I didn't even know that at the time that universities were shifting to get into micro-credentialing, right? And if we're talking about the future, I think that you will see more and more universities moving into micro-credentialing. I was the first to do it at Dalhousie with a program in diversity, equity, inclusion. So that is the first micro-credential in DEI in Canada, but I expect there to be a lot more. And as I see large universities like Dalhousie branching into other areas as well, and looking for people who have real world experience, because that, again, this is the core of the micro-credential, right? It's actual skills. So you want people who are actually practicing in the field, working in the field day to day, that's giving this information. As an employer, I would advise you to take the extra step and audit the course yourself. So some of my clients, the HR team or like the DEI committee or somebody like that will come to me and they'll say, hey, can we purchase a few seats because we want to take the course ourselves first to audit it. And so I don't give away the seats for free, by the way, just for anybody else who is launching their own course. I started doing that, then I stopped. But they did that because they wanted to make sure, right? And that makes perfect sense. They wanted to make sure that they understood the quality of the education that they would be rolling out to their employees. They're spending a lot of money, over 6 figures, to roll out to their entire workforce. They better know exactly what it is that they're getting, right? So whereas in the past, we automatically, right, we trust, Harvard University, whatever, you go there, okay, we're not auditing that, right? But this is a new frontier, and I get it, because it's different from the culture of education that we are used to. So my advice would be to align with a university that is backing up micro-credentials. So of course, as you can imagine, there was lots of hoops I had to jump through to get the course credentialized through, validated rather, through Dalhousie. They're not going to just put their logo and their brand with any piece of content, whereas anyone can upload anything to Coursera, right? But there is a vetting process that that they are going to go through when you partner with the university. So for sure, there's going to be a lot more opportunities with a lot more traditional institutions going the route of micro-credentials. I think they see it, they see the value. And as Natasha was saying, it's like forced innovation. I don't think they really have a choice to ignore the trend of micro-credentials. I think it is just only going to increase.
Natasha, would you want to answer those questions?
Yes, absolutely, Camille. I agree. I would like to see employers reaching out to colleges and universities and just, auditing, talking to them, ask them to, disclose and if we're expecting transparency. So they're supposed to disclose the assessment methods and what kind of qualification frameworks they put together, to design their own way of assessing and basically looking into learners' impact, because ultimately we're here to align courses and classes and trainings with learners' employment outcomes. So basically the center is the learner, employee, and the quality that they bring with the knowledge, skills, and the training that they obtain through different institutions. Just talk to them, be open that channel of communication, because with all of the demographic changes that have been known to the skills development ecosystem even before pandemic. So this is not new thing. This is completely, different approach to and response to addressing needs throughout the COVID and all of this calamity that we all went through together. But we just have to realize and accept the fact that location of skills development is shifting. So from costly and time-consuming certification through colleges, universities, to short-term and on-the-job training. So this is a trend. So we cannot ignore the trend. If we do, we're going to be left behind. So the first responders in this whole ecosystem would actually benefit and become industry leaders, educational leaders in micro-credentialing. Based on the environmental scan, I read that in Canada, over 50% of universities and colleges are already into providing micro-credentialing. And those that haven't started yet, they're designing and planning. So maybe it's a matter of resources, maybe just, the response rate, being overwhelmed with all of these changes. But I think when people sit together and talk and just open that channel of communication, that there will be outcomes for all. Personal, benefit for learners and growth for employers, and this tech-driven trend that we're all in, and we just have to sit together and talk and have more platforms like today's to actually exchange ideas and talk about all of the challenges. I would like to sit with from people from the micro-credentialing world to explore all of these challenges, so I can share success stories, but also what I would like to put on table and propose, and how do we talk to each other, policymakers, funders, private, public sector, all of us.
Okay. I guess I'll end with last thoughts because I work at the Future Skills Center. So just to build on what everyone's saying, it is happening across Canada right now. There's over 100 micro-credential programs that are being offered. The pathways to them requires that we as individuals nudge our politicians to create policy around standardizing them so that you can take micro-credential you earned in Ontario to BC, Nova Scotia, wherever. One of the questions that I saw in the chat is, what is the future of legitimizing micro-credentials in the Canadian job market, and what skill shortages are being addressed with micro-credentials? And an example that comes to mind is construction. Right now, there's a project at FSC where the construction unions across Canada have decided to digitalize their recruitment centers. And what that means is just making the assessments available online instead of having you go to a training hall. And that saves so many job seekers money. It saves them time, because built into the assessment is an opportunity to assess for disabilities. So if you have dyslexia, dyscalculia, like AI is tracking these things. So there are digital processes that are making it easier for people to complete bits of knowledge that used to take 4 or 5 tries. So it's happening. We just don't see it because it's digital. So this is where I would I would nudge everyone in the chat to like check out your local college and university and ask them what they're doing. They're more than happy to disclose, because like colleges and universities want you to be there, to be a part of the network. So ask what they do with the tuition and they will show it to you. And to Natasha's advice, like, to walk into these places, it's free. You don't have to pay a cover charge like a nightclub. So go into your local college, university, talk to faculty, talk to the employment center. And I'm at Toronto Metropolitan University. You can feel free to reach out to me at any time and ask me what's going on. So just to close and give the mic to Jolene for next steps. Thank you both, to Camille, Natasha, for opening up this chat. It's been really great to talk about the future of education and work, and next steps will allow us all to like get back to figuring out how we can work together. So thank you so much for your time today, everybody. And Jolene, take it away.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I will end with a comment about a block of questions that we didn't get to around how micro-credentials can help and enable newcomers, immigrants, folks from particular cultures that face distinct barriers enter and thrive into the labor market. And while I really love this idea of the choose your own adventure approach, where we can stay creative, stay innovative, and stay engaged in our ongoing learning through micro-credentials, it's also a way to set yourself apart. It signals to employers your intentionality, or similar to what Camille said, it's not about what you know, it's about what you can do, but also that there's growth in your ongoing pursuit of learning. And I think that, alongside the opportunity to, often because it's not just the educational institutions, it's employers feeding into the development and design of a lot of micro-credentials, there's a lot of opportunity for networking. And so there's that job connect immediately that comes with micro-credentialing that perhaps is not quite as organic with a traditional post-secondary education. So really something to be mindful of as adult learners or folks in the workforce that are looking to advance in their careers. I just wanted to end again on the next steps, how you can stay involved, keep connected. We will be hosting the next in the series next Thursday at the same time, same bat channel. You can click on the same link. This conversation will foreground hybrid working models that are rooted in an ethos of equity and equity principles. And to cap off, we'll have a final session on Thursday, the 23rd, on deepening our diversity action, moving from commitment to tangible action. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd like to participate or feature your workplace, please reach out to my colleague, Jessica, at jperrin@ywcacanada.ca. Feel free to click at the link at ywcacanada.ca/move-forward, and feel free to find out more about our initiatives and the ongoing project. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.